What's up guys? Today's video I want to talk about should you buy the iPhone 10 for going into 2023, and I would definitely wait. This is one of those things where I get a lot of questions about this and I have to redirect people to the 10s because the iPhone 10, if you go ahead and type it in on Amazon, it's right now, for whatever reason, it's roughly around the same price as the 10s, which is a better phone. And if you plan on keeping this phone for around 2-3 years, you're definitely gonna actually want to go with the 10s. So you can see 225, 228, and if we go ahead and iPhone XA, if you go ahead and type in 10s, then you can see that the price is 239, 248, which is really not that big of a difference there. So what are the reasons why I would say you want to go with an iPhone 10s here? And it's simply because it's not that the phones are that much dramatically different, right? It's the processor. The 10s is going to have a longer lifespan simply because of it has a newer processor, right? So if you go check the Geekbench scores, you can see the iPhone 10 has the Apple A11 chip. The 10s has the Apple A12 chip. That actually makes a kind of a bigger difference here when it comes to software support. So the iPhone 10 will be supported, or the 10s will be supported a little bit longer than the iPhone 10. And not only that, but when you're playing video games and stuff like that, the iPhone 10s will actually perform better than the iPhone 10 when it comes to gaming. And I'll just give you an example. Load up PUBG here. Are in on PUBG here on the iPhone 10, and if you go to graphics, you can see we can do HDR Ultra, but we can't do HDR Extreme on here. The iPhone 10s can actually do HDR Extreme. Not only that, but it's just a little bit more consistent with the frame rates. Even though the 10 does a pretty good job with gaming performance, like I said, it makes no sense to get the 10 over the 10s at the same price. So the question comes into play here: what should I be paying for the iPhone 10? I would say to make it worthwhile, I would probably look to get this phone for under 180. I feel like that's a good deal. So 170, anything around that price range would be pretty good. So that would be a pretty good deal. Otherwise, if you're paying 200, 220 for this phone, it really makes no sense. You just pay the extra $10, $20 and get the 10s. Again, better processor. Not only that, slightly better cameras on the 10s, and the 10s will most likely have a longer lifespan as well too. So it'll get probably a few more years of software updates than the iPhone 10. So I definitely just want to make sure people know that, because I see people revisit this phone, but they don't go over that this phone is extremely close to the iPhone 10s. Now, also, there could be a bigger price jump, right? And there could be a bigger price jump in other countries. So these are just the prices for the USA. If you see a dramatic price jump between the 10 and 10s in your country, then it probably makes more sense to get the 10, right? So I definitely can see that, making sense there. So if it's like $150 more in another country, then definitely the iPhone 10 is still great. And I want to go over just some of the stuff that I really like about this phone. Like the display on here. It is a very nice display on here. It's got an OLED display. It's at 5.8 inches, so it's somewhat compact and somewhat easy to hold. It's a 1080p plus display, and it has a pretty nice high PPI at 458. And like I said, it looks really beautiful. It even has a better display than the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 10R. So definitely, if you like watching YouTube videos a lot, you like photo editing, it's just way better on an OLED display. And also, you could take advantage of some battery benefits if you use a dark wallpaper as well too, which is really sweet. So that's also one thing I really like about this display here. Now, the iPhone 10 is running iOS 16, and it runs it actually pretty smoothly. I really don't have any issues with performance on here. Yes, does it take a little bit longer than the newer phones to launch applications and stuff like that? Sure, it does take a little bit longer, like a half a second longer, right? But it's not really a big deal. It's got 64 gigs of internal storage and 3 gigs of RAM as well. So it does fine with performance, just in general stuff, web browsing, watching YouTube videos. It's not like it's lagging and all that stuff. It actually is pretty nice. And really, what's awesome about the 10 is that it's really a rehash of a lot of the newer iPhones. The design on here was so iconic. You can see Apple kept this design for a very, very long time. We now just got a different design with the iPhone 14 Pro, and barely a different design, right? You just see the cutout is different. So this was a really iconic, design for Apple. It was a really big design switch, especially from phones like, the iPhone 8 and stuff like that. All right, so this phone still has Face ID. It works really well as well, so no issues with that. The stereo speakers on here actually still sound pretty good. Go ahead and check them out. So pretty good speaker quality, pretty good bass on here as well too, so no issues with that. The design on here, like I said, extremely comfortable. I think it's way more comfortable than the newer iPhones with the curved edges. It just fits in the palm better. It doesn't leave like a little mark that the sharper newer phones will do. And yeah, I think it still has a classy look. I love this color as well too. I think it still looks classy. I think it still looks good, honestly. All right, so let's talk about the camera. So the 10 has a dual camera setup. It's a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto. It does 2x optical zoom, and then a 7 megapixel selfie. It does 1080p 30. Just like any other older phone, this phone is gonna do pretty good. As an older flagship, it's gonna do pretty good in good lighting. It's only when you pull it out of good lighting does it start to struggle. Also, it'll just get a little bit soft if you pull it out of good lighting, so it doesn't do as well as newer phones. It can sort of have a little issue with white balance, I noticed. But honestly, it's a pretty good camera phone for the most part. If you're in pretty good lighting, outdoor lighting, you'll be able to take some pretty good shots with this phone, especially considering the price. So, the photos might not blow you away or anything like that, but you'll get a good shot in good lighting, like I said. So the video is actually pretty good on here as well. I think Apple has always had, some really good video on their phones. So as far as the image quality goes, I think the cameras are pretty solid. All right, so let's talk about battery life, and let's see how much battery health I have on this one. I have 90%. So I have 90% battery health. This phone typically will get me almost around 6 hours of screen on time, so it gets pretty close. Like I said, I wouldn't consider this an all-day phone because it just barely gets to all day. You will have to charge it, but the battery life is pretty decent. And if you're gaming, then you could probably bet that you probably only get like 3 hours of screen on time just straight up gaming on this phone. So yeah, so the battery life is pretty decent. Like I said, it's a smaller battery. It's got a 2700 milliamp battery pretty much. It does have wireless charging on here as well too, which is really nice. So overall, guys, I think it's a pretty decent buy if you get it at the right price. I just would not buy it. I would price check with the 10s, right? And see how close the 10s is, because people will just see that it's cheap and they want a new phone, and they'll just blindly buy it, and they'll forget about there's literally a 10s that's gonna be better than this phone. So what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.